Hello there. It's 3:00 on Tuesday. We all know what that means. Another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. This is a special Breaking Bond because someone has an anniversary today.
I do.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
I do, man. It's 31 years ago.
And you are.
The guy who has the anniversary.
Introduce yourself, Andy Kahn.
Andy Kahn, Director of Victim Services, Crime Stoppers of Houston. Look, studio audience.
Yeah.
Studio audience. You're welcome to come in. You have a ticket?
No.
All
It's
right,
packed in here. You got to have a ticket.
We'll let you in. You have a front row seat and watch this production.
Explain the 31-year
So-
anniversary.
In 1990, the mayor's race in Houston, kind of like where we are right now.
91?
91 or
Yeah.
something like that. You weren't even born yet. So
That's right.
not even bother with that. So crime was the only issue because
was.
we were inundated by parolees. It was a prison overcrowding. Offenders were only doing 1 month of every year they were sentenced to.
You may have reported on that a few times.
That's kind of how you and I
Right.
Got to know each
That's
other.
how we are where we are today
That's
on
right.
that. And one of the candidates who ran for mayor, Bob Lanier, met with some victims groups. I had been doing some volunteer work with them and developed a reputation as a straight shooter, which was back then unheard of.
Which since
And-
you've lost. I'm kidding. It's short-lived.
Yes, pretty much. Little did they know.
Right.
So Lanier asked these groups like Parents of Murdered Children, Matt, he said, hey, if I'm elected, what can I do to help you guys? They said, well, we'd like a staff person at the mayor's office to address victims' rights in public. And he goes, sure, just like that.
First time. I mean, the city
No.
never had a crime victims.
I was the first one in the country to
Really?
be a victim
Yeah.
advocate, an ombudsman, a troubleshooter, and as you well know, a few other choice words
Right.
that I
That
was
we can't say to live stream.
staffed out of a mayor. My staff consisted of me. We got along real well.
Me, myself, and I,
That
team of
my
3.
agenda got by. I had no issues whatsoever, and that's how it began because Bob Lanier was a pioneer and a vision, and he gave me I remember Mayor's chief of staff, God bless him, he looked at me and he goes, I haven't the faintest bleepinest idea of what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So do whatever the bleep you think is right and bleep out of here. So there was no, like I said, I wasn't like I could call New York, LA, or Chicago
Right.
and say, nor could they put a manual.
Right.
Well, yeah,
So read the
you
manual.
really didn't even have details about the job, right? It was just sort of, you do what you need to
do.
do.
It was,
Right.
it was
Play it by
totally
ear.
He did.
impromptu, and I was very fortunate, and I survived several administrations, and some decided I would be better fitted somewhere else at HPD, and then Crime Stoppers made me, in the great Godfather fashion, an offer I couldn't refuse, and just when I thought I was getting out, they lured me back
They
in.
did.
I mean, even though it's been under the mayor's office and an HPD and now Crime Stoppers, you've basically been kind of doing the same thing.
I'm truly blessed and honored. I can't believe it 31 years later that we're still doing this.
Well, and the interesting thing too, you go back to what you were talking about before, and like Dina Cronin and some of the people that were really big, in these groups, they just like fell in love with you. I mean, they're the ones that really kind of
They did
got the whole thing going.
without victim surviving family members of homicide. Man, I wouldn't be where I am today.
And I mean, you've been with some of these people almost the entire
They're
through your whole
basically part
career.
of my extended, family. People
Right.
like Gilda Miskwinski,
Yeah.
chapter leader, PONC, Beverly Campos. I've
Yeah.
known them 30 some odd years.
And they treat you like family. And they've been good to me too. I've been blessed to have them in my life as
I'll
well.
tell you one quick story.
Okay.
It was early on in Bob Lanier's administration, and there was a press conference, and a reporter, not from Fox News, comes up in the mayor's press conference, and he asks him a question about something that I might have done that might have offended somebody. But I can't imagine me doing that.
Me either.
And so he asked him, to respond, the mayor. And I used this 31 years later, and Lanier looked at the reporter and he said, I don't expect Mr. Kahn to please the criminal element. What a great line. huh?
And that's true. You have not
That's
pleased the
definitely not
criminal
your
element.
agenda.
Yes, so.
Joining us today is Emily DeToto. Emily DeToto, introduce yourself.
Hi, Emily DeToto. I am a criminal defense attorney. Been a criminal defense attorney, or an attorney for 27 years, a criminal defense attorney for 26 years. And I had the fortune of meeting Mr. Khan years ago. And although people might think we're on
I
the
was not a client of yours.
No, yes, no.
Just making
People
sure.
might not understand how someone who is a champion for victims' rights can befriend a criminal defense attorney. But I serve as someone who gives the counterpoint to Andy's point. We have
I
become
thought you always
friends.
agreed with.
Right.
We become friends, but he asks me, the other side of the story, and I'll let him know the other side of the story. And so with that in mind, I've brought Andy a present to celebrate his 31 years.
The chicken.
Championing, right, you might want to step away. Championing for 31 years of victims' rights.
Not only
But-
did you buy this, but tell us that you lost a
I
bet.
lost a bet. We won't talk about what the bet was.
I will.
Well, you will, but let's look at this first. This is ironic
Great.
because although
This
he's
is
a
really
victims'
good.
rights advocate, he needs
That's
to
a nice
understand
bag.
that sometimes things happen.
Boy, do they. What is it?
Mistrial.
It's a cologne called
Mistrial.
Mistrial. It's a $30 cologne, and boy, it smells like a $30 cologne.
It smells like a mistrial.
It smells like a mistrial.
That is
Thank you
great.
so much.
Show it to the
I have
mistrial.
never seen.
And
Where'd you find this? At the,
down the street. I traded a bottle of water for it.
you got ripped
Yeah.
off.
I was gonna
Alright.
say, you made your bottle of
You
water
got it.
back.
Actually, no, I thought it was
That's
ironic
cute. Thank you.
because you never know how things are gonna happen.
Yeah, that's
And
the truth.
sometimes
I've been
things
there.
end in
Yes.
mistrial,
I
so
have been there.
even with the best of intentions, sometimes things end in
No.
You
mistrial.
never know what's
And,
gonna happen. You
right.
never know what a jury's gonna
You
do.
never know what a jury's gonna do, and that's why, it behooves us as criminal defense attorneys to put the government to task. If they're gonna accuse someone of being a murderer, a sex offender, and brand them a convicted felon for the rest of their lives and strip them of their liberty, they better bring it.
I mean, the system would be seriously broken if there weren't really good, excellent defense attorneys.
Exactly, and you want a good defense
Of
attorney. You want
course.
someone on the other side who's gonna make the government. prove
And
their
I
case.
actually
Right.
tell victims' families, you want that defendant to have the
The
best
best,
possible
yeah,
Right,
counsel, because trust me, you want to make sure you don't go through this
right,
right.
again, so you want them to have
Right.
someone that's gonna,
Well, I can remember cases, and I'm sure you can too, where it's like the defendant, they're convicted, and then they say, I had ineffective counsel.
exactly.
And I
right.
mean, there were cases that could be overturned
There's
based on that.
law books full of cases where people have been denied effective assistance of counsel. And what Andy tells people, victims about how they want the defendant to have good counsel, I tell potential clients that you want to have a good lawyer on the front end, because if you get convicted, there's a very slim, believe the statistic is 1% of people win their appeals. And for those that get convicted of serious offenses where there's not an appellate bond, you're fighting from the inside.
Yeah,
And you're not fighting from the outside anymore. And so you don't want to go to sleep at night wishing you would have done everything you could do to get a good lawyer.
and then, have you been watching the Waco?
I have.
Dan
I
Cardell,
have.
that's a perfect example of what excellent
Zealous,
defense
vigorous
attorneys can do.
Right. And I will tell you that I had texted Dan, I used to office with Mr. Cogdell years ago, and I had texted him because I didn't keep up with that trial. Frankly, I didn't know that they were acquitted, and then I didn't know that. I'm embarrassed, but.
Well, it's
And
been a long
he did
time.
text me and let me know that there were other fine lawyers also involved that should have also gotten recognition.
Rocket Rosen.
Rocket Rosen,
Yes.
God rest his soul, may his
Yes.
memory be a blessing. Doug Tinker, Mr. DeGuerin,
Right.
just a slew of other lawyers that were involved. And he wanted to let it be known that although they focused on him, that he felt like the other lawyers should have also gotten recognition.
And that too, to me, is a perfect example of there's two sides.
Right.
No doubt about it.
Right.
And yeah, sometimes the state is wrong. The government is wrong.
Right.
And when the state or the government is wrong, somebody needs to say, hey,
Right.
this,
They'll always outman us. They have more resources.
right,
Here in the Harris County District Attorney's Office, over 200 and some prosecutors, paralegals, investigators, support staff. A criminal defense attorney is never going to be able to outman them. But
Right.
what we
How
do is we can
do
outwork
you
them.
get appointed to a case as opposed to hired? Are you appointed by
I
another
can be
court?
appointed, yes.
How does that work?
So now, I mean, back in the old days, it was, if the judge knew you, he would appoint you. But
Yeah.
now there's a system where it's called the wheel, where you'll sign up. Well, you first have to be approved to be on
You
the
spin a
appointment
wheel
list.
or like?
It's like bingo. It's actually more like Wheel of Fortune, but it's
do you buy
not
Val?
piano-like, yeah. But, no, and so I guess a list of at least 5 names per case. So I'm first degree bilingual, so I can get murders and sexual assault cases in if they speak Spanish. If someone's a 3rd degree, but names get put to the judge and he can choose. This is how it used to be, or the coordinator might.
You
I'm
do
gonna
both
preface
federal
one.
and state,
I do not take federal appointments. I can get hired on federal cases, but
but you
by
do
the time
federal
you-
trials too.
I do, but by the time you get into the federal system, everything's tied up with a white bow and a blue Tiffany box, and
Yeah.
it's pretty much, it's
Yeah, the
it's
feds
difficult.
get you, you're
Right.
Yeah.
You're pretty
The
much
feds get to
cooked.
pick and choose what
Yeah.
cases they want.
you're
This-
very cooked.
It's so hard sometimes to follow, especially federal sentencing.
Right,
It's
those are
crazy. It's
guidelines.
like, yeah,
Right.
I've sat there before and I'm lost through the whole
And
thing.
what's worse is my father was a federal probation officer in the Southern District for 26 years. So I should get the guidelines,
Yeah.
back and forth. But it's kind of
Who
one of those
listens to their
things.
dad?
Yeah, right. And hey, it's my dad.
Where we're gonna talk today, bring us up to speed on what's going on. There's still 2 bills.
So yesterday morning, I thought we were dead in the water.
On which
So
one
we
now?
had Senate Bill 1318, which is kind of the ad hoc adding on to what happened with Senate Bill 6
Which is.
last legislative session, which for the most part eliminated PR bonds, personal recognizance bonds for defendants charged with most violent crimes. That was the big crux. And it involved a lot of administrative keeping track of why you would deny bond and making sure that criminal histories were in front of the judge and magistrate.
That they know everything, yeah.
So that passed. So one of the kind of quirky things that we found out, like anything else, you got to make some changes to the bill. So I brought to Senator Huffman's attention an issue that should be near and dear to everybody's heart, and that's felon in possession of a firearm, unlawfully possession of a firearm. And as you and I know, we've done stories on possession of a prohibited weapon, a machine gun, that gets out on a PR bond. And I just thought, you know what, we should add that offense to the list of offenses
Felon in
not
possession of a weapon.
eligible for a PR bond. So that's part of this larger bill. And it also has to do a lot with the magistrates. And correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things I see, Emily, on a majority of cases that get PR bonds, it's not the actual elected judge.
It's
The magistrate,
Right,
yeah.
it goes
You-
before, right.
Yeah, and I've actually seen some of the Harris County judges, and I give them all the credit, and I know that'll probably surprise a lot of people, but I've seen several courts that will come back after a PR bond is granted.
Right,
They'll revoke that bond.
right. Or
And
find
yeah.
the bond is insufficient.
Correct.
Right,
I've
Yeah.
seen that happen
right.
as well,
Yeah,
so.
bonds
Because
are going up. Thank you, judges. I mean,
Well,
judges are
I-
paying attention and they're,
Oh, thank you.
2 out of 3 ain't bad here.
but okay, what do you think about, you've got a client, they're a felon. I mean, should they not violate the law? I mean, should they not? Why do they need a gun if you know going in that you're a convicted felon, you can't have a gun?
Well, it depends on the circumstances. First of all, every person, all of us sitting here and in the room and our special guests, we all enjoy the presumption of innocence.
Yeah,
And you can indict a ham sandwich, as we all know.
right.
And just because someone's accused of a crime doesn't mean they're guilty.
That's true.
And
Yes,
so
of
that is
course.
the first and foremost thing judges need to consider. Number 2, it's whether or not they have a lengthy criminal history. Number 3, it's their likelihood to reappear for court. But, I've had some clients who are accused of felonies that are still open, and the judge uses that against them to deny them a bond in the next case, even though they haven't been convicted of the first case.
How do you argue that to try to?
Exactly what I said.
Yeah.
I say, Your Honor, we can't, forget the presumption of innocence. It's just, but at the end of the day, the judges hold a great deal of discretion and they have to answer to the community. So I
Right.
can understand,
That's a key word, discretion.
right, they
Yes.
have a great deal of
Yeah.
discretion. And
Mhm.
so, unless you can prove on my side abuse of discretion for failing to grant a reasonable bond, then it becomes very difficult because judges do enjoy a great deal of discretion.
Well, and from the judge's standpoint, okay, I've got 3, 4 open charges of aggravated robbery. I
Right.
mean, the judge could be sitting there thinking, if I let you out, or if I give you, set a low bond,
Right,
more than likely, or by what it looks like, you're gonna go out and rob other
Pattern, yeah.
people.
It
Yeah,
might look that way,
Yeah,
but
you'll end
that's-
up on breaking bond.
but that's exactly why in criminal trials, the jurors are not allowed to consider prior criminal history
right.
because of what you just said. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a
Right.
duck. And that's not
But-
fair and that's unconstitutional.
But in a way, right, but in a way that's different because you should just be on trial for that particular charge,
Right.
not anything else you've ever done
Right.
in your life. I
Right,
mean,
but
that's,
human nature is human nature.
Right.
If I walk in here and you knew that I always had chiclets and then I walk in with chiclets,
Like these.
like
Yeah.
those. I mean,
got these.
that's what we call in law res ipsa loquitur, which means it speaks for itself.
yeah. Chicklets speak for themselves.
No, so I was,
I'm taking some of those before.
I'll give you there's certain colors that I will,
Don't they all taste the same?
No, the
they
green
do
ones are the
not.
worst. The mint ones are the worst.
Really?
which one?
The mint ones are the
The
worst.
green?
I grew up going to I grew up going to Reynosa because I was raised in McAllen,
Yeah.
and they would sell those. And I always ended up with the worst tasting flavor because I was the middle kid. But that's a whole other.
Well, that's a tradition, and we gotta continue that
That's a
tradition.
live stream all
That
in
is all
itself.
it
I'll bet you never thought we'd be
Breaking
talking
chiclets.
about these chiclets on Breaking Bond, but we are. But I was at a conference last week speaking on one of our projects.
Tell us about that real quick.
So we have a project that's first of its kind in the country. We were actually funded to record victims, mostly surviving family members of homicide, but we kind of expanded a little bit, whose offender will eventually be up for parole. And the gist for that case, and you know this family, David and Debbie Schwartz, their son Douglas and his friend Eric, they were murdered in 1994. They came down on spring break and did what stupid college kids do, and they tried to buy pot. They were shot and killed execution style, both of them,
Terrible.
right off of South Post Oak in Maine. The suspect fled the country. For 21 years, he was
Yeah.
on the run. And eventually, he was caught and extradited back from, of all places, Venezuela,
Hmm.
which is extremely rare.
Hard, yeah.
Yeah, and we had to make certain provisions so he was convicted of a double murder and he was sentenced to 60 years in 2017. So he'll be parole eligible in 2043.
Mhm.
David and Debbie Schwartz aren't gonna be around. That's just
Right.
reality.
Oh,
I
I
will, because I already booked the appointment to meet with the parole board in 2043. You can cover that story.
He's like Cher, he's never
You
going
can
away.
cover that story.
It's more
So I
like
thought-
Cher and cockroaches
Willie
and Andy
Nelson,
Cod,
yeah.
the last things
Right.
to exist.
So I thought, how do we preserve their voices? How do we make sure that they have a voice? And we came up with this project where we actually record and we sit down, we talk about their family, what this murder did to the family,
That makes
what do they
sense.
want the parole board to do? And in cooperation with the parole board, these videos are archived and placed in the offender's file. So whenever they do come up. for
Who
parole-
thought of that? Did you think of that?
I know you didn't. So that's,
Oh, if I thought of that, I'd be sitting there bragging.
Right?
that's,
Did you think of that?
I did, man.
Wow.
Occasionally I get, a winner.
I really,
So we've done 26 videos so far. We have 6 more that we're.
so could
tracking
you
to
do it like, even if, like, let's say it's somebody that's young and it's, 20, 30 years,
Yeah.
could they like go ahead and do it just?
Yes, we've
On
done
the safe
that.
So there's
We've
no
done-
age requirement for someone to record their video. It's just anyone can.
Anybody
That
who
wants
has,
to?
and we've done for some that are already in the parole process.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And we've done some that one we did, it was a solicitation of murder. She survived a hit
Mhm.
on her, a very high profile case here in He'll be eligible in 30 years.
But then I'm
Yeah.
gonna play defense
devil's
attorney.
advocate, that
I mean, could you make the legal argument that,
the defense.
well, yeah, okay, that's what Randy Wallace thought 30 years
Right,
ago.
but the times have changed.
Yeah,
But also, I believe that what's good for the goose is good for the gander, so why wouldn't an offender, and I use that word only because that's the legal lingo,
sure.
why couldn't a convicted individual, their family also record videos and put it in the archives? Because
Whoa.
number one, I've been denied parole hearings before.
Why?
Me?
Because they,
No.
no, because they can say no.
Yeah,
I usually request in-person hearings. I've had one. I drove all the way down with my client's brother. We met face to face and they promptly told us no. But
First
if-
of all, they shouldn't give you an answer to begin with. The fact that
well,
you got
the
an
fix was
answer.
in,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway, so, but why, if, I support that if the other side is also able to preserve their testimony to be reviewed by the defendant's family.
Well,
Because they could
you
also
just
be-
put a quest out for yourself. You just put a challenge out for yourself. So we did this. So
Right?
I, on the record here, am challenging you,
To make
Emily,
that happen.
to make that happen.
Oh,
You
I'm
heard
on
it
it.
here first, right?
I'm on it.
We have witnesses here first.
and
I'm
after you do it, it will be a behind Breaking Bond exclusive,
It will.
right?
But no, and it's a valid point.
Right.
I
Yeah,
agree.
no,
I
it-
agree.
definitely.
Because
yeah.
here's the deal.
Right.
When someone is up for parole, the prosecutor, the convicted individual gets notice of when they're going to be up. A lot of times, by the time they get that notice, it's too late for them to call their family, rally a parole attorney, and get the parole packet together.
Nope,
However, as
disagree.
lopsided as this is, the prosecutors get notice before the convicted individual does. And I have-
Maybe
I
months
have-
ahead of
I
time.
have
Maybe in another
personally-
state.
I have personally had one client who was charged with the offense of graffiti. He was a client and now friend named Uriel
He was in
Landeros.
prison?
He spray painted over a Picasso, put it on YouTube.
Okay, that's a little
Wow.
Put it on,
different.
put it on
That's-
YouTube. and
No, let's.
Put it on YouTube and absconded, okay?
Why did he do that?
Well, he was part of the Occupy Wall Street movement. He
Yeah.
has now turned his life around,
Good.
but he served
Well,
every
there are no more
calendar
Picassos
day.
left to spray
He
paint.
sprayed, he served every calendar day of those 2 years because
2
the
years.
DA's office consistently contested his parole.
He couldn't have been up for parole that often. It was a 2-year
They
sentence.
contested
So
his
hold
parole.
on, let's,
They did.
so the one
We can have him on your show
the
next
one
time.
time, the one time that he was up for parole,
And
they
they
objected.
alleged he was a gang member, which,
Because he had graffiti?
and he spray painted, it's called, his tag was Conquista, which by the way, they're releasing a documentary on Netflix.
Really?
Yours truly is making
What
a
a
cameo,
subtle
but that's
plug
not
right there.
why I'm talking about it. I'm just saying.
Oh, what a segue
I'm
into
saying
that.
that the DA's office has the power to issue parole protests.
Yeah,
And so what happens when someone gets sent to TDC, as a former prosecutor, I'll tell you, we fill out a TDC form with the facts of the case, and then we send TDC the offense report
yeah.
of what they've been convicted of. And so the defense side doesn't get to simultaneously send good letters.
They get the same notice.
And
that
you know
we
where
do.
that goes? In the Rolodex, the round Rolodex that
Yeah.
you chunk things into.
You're
and
making,
try to prove
you're
that you're a
making
basketball player.
assumptions without any empirical evidence to support that they don't
That you
look
can
at
dunk.
that. It's the same process that victims' families.
Hey,
go
before we
through.
go, talk about the other one too, the other bill.
All right, so SJR, what's SJR?
I don't know, do you?
Senate Judiciary.
Oh, you're close, you got Senate right.
Senate Justice.
JUDIC.
Judicial.
Judicial.
Judicial, okay,
Association.
RES.
Jurisdiction.
Resolution.
Got it. You
Is
get,
there a prize?
you get a gumball.
One
You get
gumball.
lucky gum. Lucky gum. You can have,
This is my lucky
The
day.
worst
I don't
flavor.
like the orange one.
That's what I'll get, is the orange one.
You
I
get the
love
orange.
it.
So SJR 44, and this goes back to what you were saying before, which is why I said the word discretion. SJR 44 is a constitutional amendment that would allow Texas voters to decide whether or not judges should have discretion not to grant bond to defendants charged with certain violent felony offense. So the
Right.
voters would make a decision whether to give judges that additional tool that a lot of judges have told me their hands are tied, with the
Right.
exception of capital murder, right? So
Why are their hands tied if they have discretion?
because
Well,
they can't say no bond.
Right.
Right.
They have to give,
Yes.
every defendant except someone charged with capital murder has to have a bond. And it can't be, punitive.
Right.
This will allow judges that option of not granting a
Right.
bond.
I understand.
Yeah.
I just find that every time we codify things, it just makes things more complicated. For example, trying to get someone accused of murder, deferred adjudication, they have to find 3 things. They can find they didn't intend to kill someone, they didn't kill the person or anticipate someone being killed. A judge can always rely on the 3rd prong and just kind of like to split the baby, if you will. And
Yeah.
I'm opposed to that type of notion.
Well, how do you feel about voters getting a chance to, because if it passes, that means it's on the ballot. It doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Well,
Voters will support it.
yes, they will. I mean,
Yeah. If it's on the ballot, I think.
you never
I
know
think
what's
it's
gonna happen in a jury trial.
No.
or an
Or at a
election.
poll, yeah, at the
Right.
polls.
No,
Yes,
but,
yes, you're
so,
right.
we actually had a local Harris County District Court judge, and I've not seen this, and that actually commented on the bill.
Pro or con?
He or she, I won't give the denominator, whatever you want to call it.
Person.
The judge
The judge person,
said, I'm not supporting or opposing.
Well, then that's not really giving commentary.
that's right.
No, it's giving commentary, trust me.
Well,
I've vetted
commentary
this.
is,
This is commentary. You'll read it and you will say, yeah,
It's
it's pretty,
commentary.
it's commentary on this.
well, as you-
But for the record, the
right,
judge is making it clear that he is not supporting or opposing the bill, but then he or she goes into these, reasons, what would happen if it did pass, and the likelihood of defendants actually being given,
right.
and the steps that would take. I was surprised to see.
Any
this-
commentary.
It's
whatsoever.
very good.
It is.
It's very, very good.
No,
And I'm not, all I want to say is,
Uh-oh.
and this might not really narrow it down too much. It's a judge that really, really, really dislikes me a lot.
And I'd probably be right behind you.
That's
Right.
really hard to narrow
A
it
judge
down,
that,
but
right,
that's-
that's,
It's just
but I just want to say to that
the
judge,
record.
this, very impressive.
Your comments on SJR 44, and you know who you are because you're the only judge commenting.
They're spot on.
They are.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't a
though
part
we might disagree on a lot of stuff, we do wholeheartedly agree with your assessment of the resolution.
Yes.
Which is interesting because as we talked about off camera, that most of the judicial canons do dictate that judges are not allowed to give commentary either way on issues that might come before them because it could subject them to a motion to recuse.
Right.
That's why when judges, go to interview with endorsing committees or other, groups, they're not
Yeah.
really allowed to answer
Yeah, you-
specific questions about.
This is
Issues
the
that
first
might
time
come
I've
up.
ever seen a
Right.
comment made by someone who was actually sitting on the bench.
Well,
Yeah.
good for them.
Right.
And again, it's impressive. And I think, don't you?
I wholeheartedly agree. And my colleagues that looked at us, they were like, wow, this
Yes.
is spot on.
To judge whose name we cannot say thank you. Hey, be sure to tune in tonight. And again, congratulations, Mr.
I know,
Number
I see
31.
all my prizes. I got
Yeah.
Lucky
Right.
Gum.
And I'm dying to smell that cologne.
We're going to be lapsing
Yes,
into a
we're
sugar
going-
coma pretty soon after this is over with. But no, congrats to you, and be sure to watch tonight's Breaking Bond episode tonight at 9. Give them a little tease.
A little tease
A little
on
tease.
this. So we've got defendants, career habitual defendants. One of them has been out on multiple felony bonds for felon in possession of a weapon. And of course, gun violence is on everybody's issue. And another person that was actually on bond for a violent offense, he was on parole on a violent offense, and then was allowed to post bond on a felon in possession of a weapon. And then while on bond for that, got picked up again and he's still on parole, so go figure.
Crazy, crazy. Next time we'll celebrate your 31 years on
Next time we'll
television.
celebrate your 89th year with Fox. Now that Mark Berman has
Can you believe
retired.
that?
Yes, you are
Wow.
it.
Yeah, I am.
You're-
You're the it guy.
It's me now.
We'll start betting on when it
Right,
is,
when I'll
when
be
it's
gone.
gone.
Hey,
All right.
thank you so much for watching this live stream, and be kind to yourself and everyone else. Bye.
Bye.